MMOs, one of the most popular gaming genres on PC at the moment, whether it's World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy XIV, even something as far back as Neverwinter, or the death of Life is Feudal. They've been so popular and so much money is poured into them, but because of this, people see the cash flow. They want to take advantage of the people that are passionate about this genre of game. You have the main MMOs that have been around for time, but people are striving for something different. They want something new. So often game developer companies want to give that to them. They promise them the world, the biggest game ever played. You will never need anything but our MMO. And this is where Dreamworld comes in. Developers starting a Kickstarter to promise this massive open world, an MMO to end all MMOs, that you could pretty much do anything, whether it's exploring, building, growing nations, factions, fighting beasts, and the environment around it. And it went by the name of Dreamworld. Now, it's subsequently come out that this isn't exactly going to plan, with a terrible alpha and some questionable tactics when it comes to raising money. But there's other channels that are really focused on MMOs that have been able to explain this way better than me. So I thought I'd go and have a chat with one of them. Strife Hayes is one of the biggest and fastest growing channels in the MMOverse, and he knows everything from the worst to the best, from the casual to the downright insane. So I thought I'd ask him, what really is this Dreamworld scam all about? Can you tell us about the legacy, the complete shambles that is Dreamworld? Because I want to know the full story. I mean, I've watched your full story, but as a listener to this podcast, I'm sure people that either haven't seen your video on it or any of the videos on it would love to have a brief overview. Because trust me, if you're listening to this podcast, you are in for a ride with this. So what is Dreamworld? What's it all about?
So the experts on Dreamworld would be Callum, Upton, and Kira TV. These are two YouTubers definitely worth watching. But the general gist is there is a guy called Zach. And Zach is describing himself as a serial entrepreneur. And he teamed up with his friend Garrison, and they decided to make an MMORPG. Now, they'd never made a video game before, as far as we can tell. But they described their MMORPG as the last game you'll ever play. They said it's going to be called Dreamworld, and it went on to Kickstarter. And it got funded, I think, for about $60,000. $60,000 for anyone concerned is enough to hire a relatively competent developer for about a month. Not develop an MMORPG, which generally needs about £5 million or more. They'd said it was going to be the last game you ever play. There was going to be a construction system inside the game. So you would be able to log in, third-person game, adventure around, see your character, but you also had access to a creation kit or tool system where you would be able to build your own items, your own quests, and the world would be infinitely large. And if you walked off to the side, it would just keep generating new landmass. And if someone, so if two people start, one heads east, one heads west, infinite world. And if you then turn around and try and find the other person, you will find the world that they have then discovered. You can build your own house and all this stuff. It was then discovered they got several $100,000 worth of funding from a venture capitalist firm called Y Combinator. And this was a little bit strange because the MMORPG they were saying they were going to make currently is technically impossible. And then it was discovered that actually Garrison had some personal connections within Y Combinator, potentially family connections. So it was just a big loop of cycling money round. And a lot of us thought, okay, yeah, this is just moving money from one place to another. This is just people with a lot of money moving money around to potentially avoid saying how much money they've got. The mistake they made was claiming they were going to make the biggest MMORPG of all time, because the MMORPG player base has been crying out for new games. So when someone comes along and says, I'm going to make a new game, they're going to get scrutinized. They're going to get focused on and picked apart. Dreamworld was a promise of a game that is, at our current level of technology, just not possible to make.
No, definitely
not. But they did release an alpha. They promised they were going to release an alpha.
Oh, they did, didn't they? Oh. It looks great. It looked fantastic.
Oh, it was... Imagine if you had never made a game before and you purchased a virtual 3D space that you could run your stock model character around in. and then you purchased a couple of buildings, asset buildings that you put within your stock 3D space. And you didn't have any collision detection on the buildings. You could run your model straight through the buildings. You could jump really high. The client that you let people download wasn't even protected. You could hack the client to give yourself unlimited resources straight away. That's the alpha. That's what they had. They literally had a load of stock assets that they released as a game.
What I don't understand, and I think I might have actually commented this on your video, is when the Dreamworld Kickstarter was announced, and I don't understand how it got any funding, because the video they showed, for lack of a better term, looked crap.
It does. I think, honestly, and this is what started the whole investigation into let's look at scam MMOs. And this was one of the first videos I saw of Callum Upton, and I thought, this guy, because he is a game developer, he's actually making a thing called Nightmare World that I'll tell you about afterwards. It's a parody of Dreamworld. And we looked at it and we said, who is funding this? And we scrolled down the Kickstarter comments and we realized, right, children. Young people with no experience in game design, people who are falling for the promise of the best thing ever. Or people who just want to put money into Kickstarter, get the money given to Zach and Garrison, and then have the money given back to them via a gift. There's a lot of complex ways you can do stuff with tax. I'm not accusing them of that, I'm just saying that you can do it by moving money around this way. But there is no way anyone with any actual game design experience looked at the project and said, yes, this is worth it. It's got to be children.
I've honestly, I haven't made a video on this because I've just been sitting back and enjoying the countless, from like you and Kira TV and stuff like that, just enjoying the countless amounts of videos coming up, finding new things that are happening with this, because it just goes deeper and deeper. I mean, there was those whole videos with his girlfriend as well, or his ex as well, that came out, and it just went deeper and deeper. What do you think was the actual intention of this? Do you think they were actually trying to make a game and just went wrong, or they never planned to make a game and they just were trying to put a Kickstarter up anyway?
The intention was either make money or vastly overestimate your own abilities. We've seen that Zach has several failed things behind him already. He tried to make this wearable Bluetooth speaker. I can't remember the name of it right now, but it was terrible. His idea was, it was a strap that goes across your body with a Bluetooth speaker on the front. The Aegis, the core Aegis, that's what it was called. And it was a Bluetooth speaker that played music. That was it. So when you're running around the city and you absolutely need everyone else to hear your music, you play music out of your core Aegis speaker. And then he started a game called Elysium. And Elysium didn't do very well, although it got funded, didn't get made. And then when he released Dreamworld, it turned out Dreamworld was Elysium. The launcher in the file that you downloaded is still called Elysium. I honestly think that it's one of two things. It's either Zach and Garrison looking at the MMORPG world and thinking, these people are desperate for a game, let's fleece them. Or it's someone who has vastly overestimated their own abilities, completely underestimated how difficult an actual successful project is to make, because so far we don't see him having a successful project, and saying, right, I'm going to make the best video game ever made, despite having never made a video game.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to sum up that whole project. Have you had any sort of communication with the devs themselves at all?
I tried to log onto the Discord server, but the Discord server needs verification from various places, and then you need to not say anything for the first, 2 days. So they've pretty much gone radio silent on all of that, and they keep releasing updates to Dreamworld, which are more stock assets they've bought and added. They're not actually developing anything. If they didn't have access to the pre-rendered, prefabricated stock assets, I can't see anything being added to the game, because as far as I can tell, they don't know how to actually code anything. I would happily chat to them. I just don't think they'd happily chat to me.
Should get them on a podcast. I don't think we'd do it.
I'd absolutely love it, but again,
I'd be a mediator for that. I'd love to be a mediator.
We would need someone between us, definitely. All I want them to do is, and this is the same thing I'll say to any project, if you're going to make extraordinary claims, you need extraordinary evidence. I believe it was a scientist, Carl Sagan, possibly said that. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. If you want to say, hey, we're going to make this game, okay, cool, show me what you can do. Show me what you've done before. Show me proof of what you've got. If someone pops over and says, hey, we're going to make the... in fact, we're seeing this right now. There's an old horror game, one of my favourite games, Dead Space. You played Dead Space 1 or Dead Space 2. Well, EA had a big hand in making Dead Space 3. And Dead Space 3 was pretty much an action shooter. It wasn't a horror game. And the original team that made Dead Space 1 and 2 are now making another game. I can't remember the exact name of it, but it's pretty much a spiritual successor to Dead Space 1 and 2. And when they say, hey, we're making a really scary sci-fi horror game, and everyone says, okay, cool, what have you made before? And they go Dead Space 1 and 2. We're like, oh, right, okay, fair enough. Evidence you can do what you're claiming to do. That's absolutely great. When you want to make an MMORPG, you need to have a hell of a lot of evidence that you're able to make something before you make... It's like someone who's never got into fitness or nutrition saying, hey, next year I'm going to win Mr. Olympia. You need a bit of evidence that you can do something before you try and do everything.
Are you telling me that it's not a good argument to say, I'm making an MMO, here's my portfolio and showing a Bluetooth speaker? Are you saying that's not a convincing argument?
I think the evidence has shown us over the last month that it might not be. So if we've got any listeners right now thinking, damn, I thought my Bluetooth speaker was enough to qualify me to make the best game ever, you could probably apply for employment at Dreamworld. I think they're still employing for developers, but they've already got a guy that made a Bluetooth speaker. You might need to make something new.
Yeah, definitely. I think the portfolio needs to be a bit wider for that. What are your thoughts on just crowdfunding for games in general? Because I think it's a bit of it's a weird one, because there's a game like Kingdom Come Deliverance, which was crowdfunded to like over £1 million, and it got made, and it was an incredible game. And then you have stuff like Dreamworld that come out as crowdfunding, or even, I don't know if you followed Chronicles of Illyria much, a similar thing with that, but on a much bigger scale with like $8 million or something it was with that game.
Kira TV has got Chronicles covered very, very well. His videos are definitely worth watching on all that stuff. Crowdfunding is a real catch-22. That's a real double-edged sword. It has produced some fantastic things. It's produced some incredible stuff. And now people are looking at it and going, hey, people are throwing money at crowdfunding. All we've got to do is claim to be able to make something. And this is where evidence and proof and skill definitely comes into play. This is where if you walk up to people and say, I need $1 million to make something, and all those people say, okay, cool, what have you made before? And you have a load of evidence of stuff you've made, they feel much more confident than giving you that money. They can see, right, this guy's got the skill, or this girl's got the skill. This person can make what they are claiming to make. They just need funding. The problem starts to arise when you don't have that proof, when you don't have any of the portfolio behind you that you can make it. Crowdfunding has the potential to give us some great things. It has the potential to give us many, many scams. And I think people that are giving money need to do their due diligence and research the people claiming to make stuff. And if you want to crowdfund, make something small to show your skill. A massive team made Cyberpunk. A very small team made Portal. I would give more money to the Portal team to make something new than to the Cyberpunk team. Because they started small, they started very basic and very simple, and they said, right, we're going to make something small but super high quality. We're going to make a very short experience that's super memorable. We're going to really make this the best quality we can. We're not bothered about size, we're bothered about quality. World of Warcraft was made by the team that made Warcraft 3. They started off making a quality real-time strategy. The Elder Scrolls Online was started off being made by the Elder Scrolls teams. Todd Howard was pretty much in charge of Morrowind. He was the creative director on that game. Final Fantasy XIV had all the Final Fantasy might behind them. Make something good before you go to crowdfunding sites and say, hey, I need your money because I want to make a game. Here's what I've made before.
Yeah, I think there's also something to be said about being realistic. Like, as you mentioned, $60,000 for an MMO was not even close to being realistic. And that's where the red flags sort of come up, that I think the audience need to look out for stuff like that. Because, I mean, if Dreamworld put up, they need, I actually don't really know the numbers on making an MMO, but tens of millions, then people might think, okay, they might actually be trying to make something, although the chances of them getting that money is much smaller. But I think there's something to be said about being realistic about what you're asking for, and being obvious about what you're actually giving the audience, like what you get for your money, not just saying this is going to be the best MMO ever, but like why?
And this is another balance thing that we need to find. If you promise the world, you're going to get the naive money, the people that don't know that what you're promising is wrong, and that's pretty high because a lot of people with no sense have a lot of money. If you promise something realistic, you're not going to get the naive money, but you then might get the more cautious money. People going, right, okay, what they're promising is potential, it's possible, but people don't want to invest in something that's boring. They want to invest in something that's crazy and amazing and massive and world-changing so they can say they were there at the start when it began. You need to really temper your expectations when you are giving money to a company for any reason. And you have to ask yourself, right, why have they come to Kickstarter? Why haven't they gone to anywhere else to get the money? And if they have the technology they're claiming to have sometimes, they could just sell that technology and make tens of millions and then fund their own game anyway.